Yes, and we'll just go from there. Anyways, yes, sorry guys, I had quite a bit going on this morning. Had a meeting with a couple people, and it ran a lot longer than expected. So apologies for having to delay. I let's see, what should we talk about today? The new release 402 for the UI and 401 for the core. There were some issues fixed. We had that problem that we spoke about last week where the websites with more than one level were not loading correctly. That, I believe, has been fully fixed. I saw someone mentioning something still not loading correctly, and I haven't been able to fully test it all myself yet, but I believe that has been fully fixed now. If anyone has anything else to say about that, you can let me know. But that should be fully taken care of. We are so we did add the new feature that was supposed to not ask you again when you start the UI if you didn't want it to ask you about starting the core. It's supposed to be able to be disabled. Now that feature we found a bug in, so that will be fixed. I think Alpha's actually already fixed it, so that will definitely be fixed in the next release. So apologies for that. Anybody who's dealing with that, you can just go ahead and say no when you start the UI for now, and that will be taken care of in the next release. So apologies for that one. Other than that, we have quite a few interesting and awesome additions that are going to be coming to Qblog in the next week or so. Now, we're waiting on a couple more little changes on the core side for some of the functionality that is going to be required for what we're doing. But Qblog, guys, is we're essentially, and I said from the beginning that we are going to basically redefine what a blog is, right? And I've also said that, almost every social media type platform at the base level is essentially just a blog. It allows people to make posts. Those posts can have, content in them with text, video, pictures, whatever, right? But our blog, Qblog, is a lot more than that. And right now, yes, that is, the very basics of what it can do. But we also have the editor that allows you to do drag and drop and build, however you want the post to look. In the future, we will also be able to have, background colors or background pictures and, different blocks to do different things. Now, we were also talking about being able to do like HTML blocks with other functionality inside of that. So essentially, being able to build an application or being able to build a super fully functional website with Qblog with just drag and drop, right? So then we'll make other types of plugins for Qblog available so that people can drag and drop and add whatever functionality that they'd like to see to their blog. Now, the blog could be turned into like a whole website, or it could be turned into a semi application. It could be turned into all kinds of different things, right? What else we're going to do is right now in the menu where you click your name and it has favorites and subscriptions and block names, we're going to be adding more functionality to that. We're going to be adding what we're calling mail. So people who've been asking about email and, oh, can we replace email? Da, 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 da. Yes, we are absolutely going to replace what you would call email. And that's going to start with what is going to be added to Qblog, just called mail. Now, you'll be able to utilize that mail to send long lasting email like messages with even attachments, right? With encrypted file attachments. So that also brings into play private data, right? So you'll be able to attach files to your posts. You'll be able to attach files to a mail message. You can do a public file that people can just download, like if you want to share a PDF or something like that. You'll also be able to do a private file with a mail message where you can send one person encrypted files, which is going to be absolutely huge because not only are we going to have a like email like replacement, right? But we'll have a completely decentralized encrypted email like replacement. Now, this means that there's no potential for anything in between, which means like, worrying about whether your so called encrypted mail service provider can access those messages or not, or if something like, oh, a subpoena happens and they're asked to provide this information and things like that, right? So for one, there's no one to subpoena when it comes to Qortal, right? So there's nothing in between. There's no one in the middle. There's no company. So who are they even going to subpoena? Me? I mean, go ahead, subpoena me. See what happens. Like, it's not going to work, right? I literally can't do it, and no one else can either. And that's where I like to always say, people love this term, censorship resistant, right? Now, to me, censorship resistant means nothing. It's either censorship proof or not, right? So everything on Qortal is censorship proof. You, as the user, are the only ones who can make it so that you see a thing or that you do not see a thing, right? By blocking it, right? If you block a name, then you'll no longer see any information from that name. And as of version 402 of the UI, when you block a name, it no longer shows up in the browse portion of Q apps or websites, right? Before, it would still show up in browse and it would just show as blocked. Now, it no longer shows there at all. You can obviously go to the blocked apps or blocked websites section if you would like to see them and unblock them there if you choose to. So I think that's much better because I just got really tired of seeing that name, The Love, there. And so I was like, this needs to go away. So now when you block, it doesn't show up in browse anymore, which is great. So that is something that we added in 402. But yeah, Qblog, guys, is going to basically be a demo of pretty much all of the functionality that Q apps could potentially have. Now, someone has some noise. If you could mute yourself, unless you're going to ask a question, that'd be cool. I appreciate it. So Qblog is going to be a demo of essentially everything that Q apps can potentially do, right? Now, for developers who are not familiar with React, which is the framework that Qblog is built with, then it might be a little bit more difficult to look at the React code and see what is possible. But essentially, guys, any of the client-side languages that you can think of can be turned into a Q app utilizing the same API calls that Qblog uses. And we are going to put together like some developer information. As time goes on, we'll build like a whole developer like portal and where they can go and see exactly how you put things together and the API calls, that can be done through a Q app and so forth, right? So for now, we have the simple Q apps documentation that Cal has put together, which, yes, if unless you know what you're looking at, it might not be as straightforward as it could be. We're going to get to that point. We have Justin and Phil, who are very adamant about getting this kind of thing done so we can get more development attention. Now, what I personally think, and based off of what Phil has told me with his experience building Q apps, is that it is a whole crapload easier to build a Q app than it is to build a regular web application, right? There's a lot of stuff you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about even having some like server available to even start doing your tests on your application or anything like that. You never have to worry about any sort of authentication because that's all handled automatically through Qortal. You don't have to worry about any sort of sensitive stuff, right? you literally can just start writing an application, which makes it so much easier on developers. So, what I see happening in the future is developers are going to be wanting to build on top of Qortal simply because it's a whole lot easier than building a typical web application. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future as this progresses. We are going to put as much as possible within Qblog to show, what you can do from a Q app. Now, with the mail functionality, it's going to be really cool. Public and private data. So the core is not going to be handling the private data quite yet. So it won't be quite as fully featured as the private data once the core starts handling it, right? But you will be able to post private files for yourself, right? You will also be able to send private files and messages to others. You will be able to post public files that you can make available to others on your post or your website or whatever you want to call it, right? You will also, so we are adding a ton to this, right? We're also going to be adding the ability to build a web store from within Qblog too. So the people who are already trying to sell items from within Qblog and succeeding in doing so will be able to put up a storefront essentially, right? We are also talking. So I just messaged Kat, who, if you guys have seen that awesome video, that who was it that published that? Was it Dodgers? Yeah, Dodgers published this awesome video, um, the Qortal Network's evolution, and it shows like the development from way back in the day, back when KC was doing stuff for Quora, and Cat came involved and started building the very first version of Qortal, which was actually more of a Quora clone before we added all of our own stuff and completely rebuilt everything. And it shows the entire evolution. And it's really cool. It's a visualization of the code base, right? So if you guys haven't watched that, you should check that out. We can now also share links in QChat, so that's pretty cool. QChat, yes, still needs some improvements. The messages there are not as quick as they could be. People are still saying that things are a little slow there, which, yes, it's going to be until we have the QChat database and protocol, at which point it should speed up dramatically to where it will be a full desktop messenger replacement, right? So we will no longer need Discord, Telegram, except for getting people in and so forth. So once we get to the point where we have light nodes and we have mobile support, then we no longer really need Discord or Telegram at all, right? So that's the goal with that. I am going to really be focusing on demoing all of the stuff that Qblog can do, which is basically, again, most of the functionality or a lot of the functionality that Q apps can have so that we can show people, right? Now, there's a lot more in the back end that we have not made live yet, such as the Git repo service type and the database service type, which I think is going to be really interesting because people have asked about that considerably, where you want to have an application and you need some sort of database for that application. Now you will be able to do that on top of Qortal too. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. Now we're just building very, very like surface level demos of all the things, right? So there's a lot more that can be done, and these things can be used in different ways to build pretty much anything you can think of, especially after we add the private data functionality. That is going to be really cool. We're also talking about being able to do group encrypted messages, which we've been talking about for a while. I'm not sure exactly whether that's going to be done inside of QChat immediately or not, but the mail on Qblog, I was hoping that we would be able to have mail that's sent to multiple participants encrypted, and that those multiple participants could then read that mail. So that's what I was looking at. If anyone, let's see if anyone has any questions. Okay, yeah, no one's got questions from what I could tell yet. If anybody else wants to talk, please do. Let me know if you have questions or concerns or issues or whatever. That's what this is all for. I like to give a rundown of the overall and what's going on right now and the focus that we have and so forth. But yeah, so the main focus at the moment is to basically make Qblog completely kick ass, and we are definitely well on our way to doing that. Thank you to Phil, who is the developer, and he has been doing an absolutely amazing job. And I've been like mind blown by how quickly all these things. I'm like, oh, can you do this? And it's like the next day. He's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, wow, this is so much fun. Like I can just magically make all these things happen. So if anybody else has any suggestions, like oh, it would be cool if Qblog could do this, or if whatever, guys, like that's what Qortal's all about. Like, just make these suggestions known, and we can, potentially make it happen if it's something that makes sense, and if it's something that you would like to see or that other people would like. Please, by all means, make it known, right? And that's part of what this group or this chat is for too, is to give you all an opportunity to present these types of things or ask any sort of questions and so forth. So, if anyone else would like to talk, or if anyone has any questions, please let me know. If anyone has any suggestions or something that you would like me to talk about, also let me know that. But I am personally really, really excited about the mail functionality and encrypted data, right? So, private data is huge, guys. Like, now you'll be able to do things like include some private document with a purchase on your store or whatever. You'll be able to launch a web store really easily from within Qblog and make your sales and whatever, right? So it's going to be really cool, guys. We built all of this stuff so that we could make sure that we can demo these types of things, and support already exists for every supported coin. Now, the wallets other than Quartz do take a minute to load sometimes. That's going to be a thing until we can get, and we were talking about this morning, until we can get some sort of method to cache the information that is grabbed from each individual wallet. That's why it takes a while to load, guys. It has to go back through the wallet every time and get all of the transactions and then display the transactions and display the balance. So it's not like when, say, you open the Electrum client itself and it's got everything cached, so it's just like boom, boom, and opens up and works immediately, right? So that's what we're looking at trying to do so that we can speed up the performance of the external wallets. We can also, display the balances and stuff a lot more quickly. So that's something that we're looking into. Also, on that note, I have suggested already in the past, and I think I've mentioned this before, but the ability to do what's called spend unconfirmed change. If we can add that to our supported external wallets, then we will be able to say go to the trade portal and have checkboxes on each order, and then just go, I want this one, 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 and go. And it'll pick up all of them at once, right? Because we won't have to wait in between for the change to confirm and the balance to re-show correctly again. So if we can spend on confirmed change, it'll just be like back to back to back, done, right? So that's what I'm looking at for that. Let's see. Someone asked a question. How about private court transactions? Yes, that will be a thing in the future. We've mentioned it before. That is not on development radar right now. We have Pirate Chain supported for now. That is what, for private type transactions, if you absolutely have to have no traceability on the chain, then just go ahead and use Pirate Chain for that for now. We will absolutely do that in the future. And we have even a method that we have thought about and that Cal and I agree that will work really well with Qortal because of the way that the chain functions and the fact that we do not have change addresses. It will make it essentially 100% anonymous, right? So that is definitely going to happen. I don't know exactly when. I think what's going to happen sooner than that is first the dandelion submission methodology that we've talked about before too. So that will at least obscure which node the transaction originated from, right? And that's, I think, similar to the MWeb or whatever that Litecoin has added recently. I believe it's something very similar to that. So that at least obscures which node the transaction originated from, but that does not obviously make, something that's totally anonymous. We will add that functionality, just not quite yet. That's not a focus quite yet. So right now, it's all about demoing Q apps, getting more developers paying attention, and seeing what they can do with Q apps, which is essentially anything you can think of, right? Especially once we have private data and the database service type live and the Git repo service type live, and you know what I mean? Then it'll be literally anything you can think of. For now, we can do quite a bit. And pretty much anything you can think of at this point right now is already possible. So I am looking forward to getting more ideas from other developers and them coming in and starting to build things of their own. I am in communication with Mike Adams, Health Ranger. He has already done basically a little teaser video wherein he mentions finding an amazing decentralized platform, which he's mentioning Qortal just without the name. So his community should be, at least semi-aware that he's looking into these things right now by the time he does an interview with myself. I have introduced him to Mike Winner, and he wants to do an interview also with Mike Winner. I don't know if it'll be myself and Mike Winner, or one and then the other, or both, or whatever, but that is the current plan. He has actually set up his node the other day. He's a very busy dude, so I don't think, set up his account quite yet, but I am walking him through that process, and then obviously I will get him sponsored to Mint and so forth, and he can then start understanding at, a personal level by seeing it himself, what is possible now on Qortal. What I'm personally looking forward to that should be happening here really soon is Archive V2. Now, that I think is really exciting, especially for me, because I have a ton of virtual machines that I run on hypervisors in different parts of the world, right? And I have a lot of them where I've limited the hard drive space to around 100 to 150 gigs, because I have each server that only comes with about a terabyte of SSD space, and I like to have, at least 5 VMs on each physical hypervisor. So by making it so that the database is only going to be 3.5 gigs, guys, that's amazing, right? So that will lower the amount of data usage by a significant margin on my virtual machines, and then I will not have to worry as much about that anymore. And yeah, it's going to be absolutely awesome. Like, can you imagine a full node only taking 4 gigs for the total of the full node? Like, that's crazy. Like, it's absolutely crazy. So our full node database has actually shrunk as we've gotten further along. So it's really, really interesting. And I don't think that I've ever seen any other blockchain wherein the full node database has actually gotten smaller as time has gone on, right? And as we've seen with the existing Archive V1, the database never really gets more than like 35, 40 gigs right now. Yeah, some people, for whatever reason, if they're constantly restarting their node, or certain things where like the maintenance isn't working correctly or something, that I've seen people where they have like a 60 gig DB for some reason, but bootstrapping it and then going on from there, as long as they just keep it running, it should be just fine, right? So it's been working out pretty well with V1, where the database should stay in a relatively maintainable size. But being able to keep it at 4 gigs is absolutely crazy. So I'm super stoked about that. I got a couple questions. In case people prefer to pay an R for privacy, how is court price going to behave? Not, I mean, these questions are, I mean, how am I supposed to answer that, right? Like, it's if you're not using court, then obviously you're not buying court, and the court price is totally reliant upon a completely open market, right? We are not forcing anyone to buy court. Now, this is the thing. Everyone always asks me, "Oh, where does the court value come from? How are we going to make the court value happen?" Guys, it's from utility. This is how it was supposed to be. Forcing people to buy coins to stake or for other such nonsense is not a legitimate way to get value. It needs to be because people want the coin, because the utility of the platform is there, and because, so check this out. Since you're going to be able to run a full node with a very small amount of space, this means that no matter what, you will be able to use quartz no matter what. Now, the other supported coins, they're using light nodes because running a full node for every supported coin is just not really possible because they have never put any focus on ensuring that those full nodes are easy and in a normal size so that people can actually run them. So yeah, we have to rely upon these light node networks that may or may not, and we've seen people having issues with this already and not being able to communicate to the light node networks, may or may not function, guys. So ultimately it's going to come down to the fact that people are just going to realize that court is the best coin to use because every single user is going to be running a node. Whether it's a full node or a light node in the future, they're going to be running a node, which means they're never going to not be able to submit transactions, which means there's never going to have to be reliance upon any sort of extra thing in the middle. It's always going to work, right? So that's really the thing. And we'll also, of course, have anonymous transaction types and stuff in the future. But even now, guys, it's really all about the fact that court is a better designed coin with more utility, a lot more. No other platform comes anywhere near what Qortal offers, right? So, I mean, yes, you could say forcing people to do things is a better way to get value, maybe temporarily, yeah. But people wanting to buy the coin and the value coming from that on a truly open market means that the value is going to be stable and it's going to be exactly where it should be for the time and the users and so forth, right? So no one forces people to buy Bitcoin, and you see exactly how that played out, right? So it's the same idea, except it's a little bit further ahead because there's no reliance upon centralized markets and stuff like that. So ultimately, I mean, that question, I don't know. The question kind of annoys me because I'm like, the value should be obvious. It shouldn't be like we have to force people to buy the coin, and that's where the value comes from, and that's the only legitimate way to do it. Now look at the way Ethereum does things, right? So we could totally do it like that, where yeah, it costs you a shitload to do a single transaction, and that's like basically the only reason anyone holds Ethereum is because it costs like a shitload of Ethereum to do anything. You can't even do a swap. They're not even cross chain trades, so I can't even say that. You can't even do a swap from Ethereum. So example, I have $120 or so worth of Ethereum that I've had in this wallet forever that I've tried to convert to other things, but they won't let me. I literally can't do it because it would cost me 75% of that $120 just to make a swap happen, guys. So it's a freaking joke, right? So yeah, just I realize that the way that we do things is not typical in the crypto space or typical anywhere for that matter. But that's done on purpose, guys. We are deliberately not doing things the same way. You know why? Because we feel like the way that things are done is stupid. And we don't really want to do things stupidly, right? So the value should come because the value deserves to be there and the people understand the value and they want to help to get that value higher, right? If it doesn't come from that, then I don't want it. If it's coming just because you're forced to hold it because you have to have it to stake or whatever, that's not legit value in my opinion. It needs to come because it's deserved, and it's only deserved because there's functionality there. that people need and that people want, right? Now, another thing that's going to be really cool and using Qort only, right, is all of the AT functionality. So our ATs, now I'm having Kat look into designing two more that we have already used in the past in other chains. One of them is called Crowdfund, and one of them is called Escrow. So these two ATs will allow things like decentralized automated crowdfunding and decentralized automated escrow. So when you do an order on something like a marketplace, you'll be able to put that coin into an automated escrow. Then it will prove to the seller that you have done that. And when the order gets shipped to you and you approve it, it will release the funds, or it will release the funds automatically after a certain timeout period. So if you just, do that and then walk away and never come back, it will automatically pay the seller after a certain period of time. Now, that can get more complex in the future based off of trust scores and so forth, and you'll be able to do things like finalizing the order more quickly or giving a certain percentage of the order to the seller immediately or whatever, right? And of course, this is optional on things like a storefront where you could potentially use the AT or you could just do direct pay, right? So that is going to be something. Also, the automated crowdfunding is absolutely awesome, and especially on Qortal because we'll be able to have an entire page with pictures, videos, music, whatever you want, right? Like the same idea as Qblog, but built specifically for crowdfunding. It may even be a plugin to Qblog because I like everything being in one spot, right? So it's cool to be able to take and literally demo all the stuff on Qblog, right? So we can go one place and go, look, here, you can do this, 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 this. And it's all easy to find, easy to use. So being able to launch crowdfunds from Qblog makes sense. So yeah, we're going to be able to do that. We're also going to have a little bit later on. I didn't, and this is the one I mentioned to him, another one, and then I totally blanked out on which one it was and totally forgot. But I'm going to have him also do the automated payments over time. So you can have something like a subscription service where you fund an AT for X number of months, and every number X number of blocks, the representative of a month, it automatically pays to another account that then keeps you live in a private group that then gives you access to things that are behind the so-called paywall or whatever, right? So yeah. Anyway, another question here. Let me see, where was I? Okay, so I think that, yeah, people. Okay, so Qortal Sets says people would trade Qort or other coins for R, so the price of R would go up and the other coin price would go down. Yes, correct. Let's see. How is Archive V2 going to shrink it? I mean, how does it work? That's more of a question for Cal, but it essentially does the same thing that Archive V1 does, but with obviously archiving more of the data. Now, archive any of the archives are also accessible from the API, so it's really no different as far as the API is concerned, and you'll be able to do everything you could do as if the data was not in archive format, which is really, really cool. As far as how that works at the very low level, you'll have to ask Cal about that one because to me, it's just some magic genius stuff. It's amazing. Like, I have no idea how he did this. But essentially, it's the same idea as the Archive V1. I believe it's just going to archive a little bit more data, and it's another probably another compression method as well, but I do not know, so do not quote me on that. I can ask Cal for the specifics on that and get back to you on that one. Let's see. Yeah, of course, that assumes everything else all being equal. The core price could go up. Demand in general goes up. Exactly right. So yeah, the core price, guys, is absurdly undervalued, and people who understand this see it immediately. And the only thing that I think is kind of, quote unquote, difficult right now is that most people are used to dealing with centralized exchanges and they don't really understand how to do a real cross chain trade and all these things. And they act like they assume it's going to be difficult. And I think that's really kind of the primary thing is they're used to this like, super high frequency, like immediate type trades. But in reality, guys, you're not actually trading. What you're doing is nothing. You're moving database numbers in a centralized database from one place to another. So yeah, of course that can be done instantly, right? But that's nothing, guys. It's nonsense. You're not even like actually like that's not your coin. You're trading with the exchange's coin, and who knows if that exchange even has all the coins. If everyone were to withdraw all the coins that they supposedly have, and yes, audits, da da da, whatever, right? I still, how do you even know those audits are legit, right? Like, I don't know. I don't trust anything when it comes to centralized stuff, right? So I don't believe that a lot of the exchanges actually have what they say they have. I think that if everyone were to withdraw all at once, there would be quite a few issues there. But, that's just me thinking out loud. So you never know, right? They could all be perfect, right? But I highly, highly doubt it, seeing as I've been screwed over by so many of them in the past, even ones that were really well known and used by millions of people and whatever. Doesn't matter, guys. It really, really, really doesn't matter. And oh, they're insured by the FDIC. Oh, yeah, that matters a lot for banks, right? Yeah, okay. Yep, makes a big difference. I just, this is all nonsense, guys. It's just like, okay, great. Yeah, whatever. I'm still waiting for my so called liquidation refund from Cryptopia, in which I had about a Bitcoin worth there. They actually approved me, and that was a couple years ago. So, oh, the ones doing the liquidations, they already got paid, and they've gotten paid already over $5 million. So that's great. Good for them. They didn't even have accounts on the exchange, so great for that. Yeah, apparently doing this liquidation is really tough work. I would have done it for half the price. Fucking ridiculous. So, anyways, don't get me on a rant about centralized stuff. But anyways, guys, yeah, the value of court needs to be legitimate, right? Which means it needs to come from people who understand the platform and want to help us get the value to where or anywhere near where it should be. That will happen over time. Yes, it's idealistic. Yes, it's always going to be idealistic. This is like why we did it this way is because it's supposed to be, right? Something that's not idealistic will not really, really work for the long run. And that's why we're also built to be able to evolve, right? Like we're not stuck to a single algo. We're not going to have any issues with like any modifications that potentially need to take place in the future for one reason or another. And we'll be able to, have the platform just continually grow. Now, another cool part about this is things like we can do hard forks without people having to install new versions every single time manually and so forth. If you've got auto update enabled, boom, it's done, right? Which makes it so much easier. I've had so many problems in the past because of that specific thing. Oh, there's a hard fork. Oh, I didn't pay attention. Oh, 3 months. If you don't do whatever and send your coins and update and whatever, then you lose your coins. I've lost plenty of coins that way, guys. So, yeah, we have made sure that every aspect of things is designed with a focus on ensuring that the things that have happened to me in the past don't happen on Qortal. So, including like I was just looking past in my past files the other day, and I had a thing where I used this like web-based wallet service that was supposed to like still have giving you the full access to the coins or whatever, and I saved what they told me to save, but oh, come to find out, oh no, no, not really. If you didn't go in and do this other thing, then you don't have access to it. And I don't know, it's not that much, like $1,000 or so worth of Bitcoin and a couple different wallets that I created on that service that I now have no access to. And there are tons of other things like that, right? This other coin that I had a master node on that was given to me, and oh, yeah, you can't run that anymore. Now we're moving to some like Ethereum based model, and that's all gone. And so that thing that you guys gave me because you owed me, okay, whatever. Yeah, okay, I can't do that either. Fine, whatever. I've just basically written off every coin that I've dealt with in the past because they're all either completely dead or moving in directions that make no sense, or have already hard forked and I have no chance of getting any of the coins anyway, or like I've lost access to them because of one thing or another, right? So the idea of having all of the wallets under one single backup file, you have that one backup file, you remember how to get into that one backup file, then you don't have to worry about backing up each individual wallet, and you'll always be able to access it because you have the ability to dump the actual private key from within that wallet, right? So there's a lot of things that were done in Qortal to ensure that it will last forever, and it will make your lives so much easier. You'll never have to deal with any of the nonsense that I had to deal with, right? So, you're welcome. I think a lot of this stuff, maybe people might have to go through it, which sucks because we're trying to help prevent that, right? But I mean, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, these people just refuse to stop focusing on centralized exchanges only. They refuse to actually like do things in a way that where they're not going to have any risk associated. So, they're all potentially going to have to deal with it the hard way, and that sucks. But it is what it is, right? Yeah. Buying courts not for holding, but for paying for services. Some will prefer private. Right. Okay. Yeah. You will be able to. I mean, obviously, guys, you can create a private account on Qortal, right? It's easy to do, especially if you say do a cross-chain trade for the coin that you get instead of sending it from another Qortal wallet. But even if you do, that's only an assumption that that account is controlled by the same person. I've sent coins to plenty of wallets. Do I own them all? No. So once you send coin from one wallet to another, there's no guarantee that that's your coin. So you can easily just create another account, send coin to it, and use that, and it's anonymous, right? Like, yes, people can make assumptions, but that doesn't make it true, right? Just saying. Since this is completely decentralized, there's no way to tie an actual identity to any of these wallets, guys. So creating a new account, using it for whatever you want, it's not going to be able to be actually proven that it's you. Just saying. Even if someone does know that another wallet is you. And even if they do know that, it's still not proven because then you have to say, oh, this is me. And then, okay, I still don't believe you. Go ahead and prove it. Then you have to actually send money or send court from that wallet to somewhere else to say, okay, yes, fine, right? Now I believe that this person controls that wallet. Somebody could come in and register whatever name they want. Someone could come in and register my whole name and say, oh, I'm Croatic, right? Like, they could register Croatic -2, which I think someone already did, right? And that wasn't me, but I did have that name for a while in Discord, so people could make that assumption, but it's just an assumption. So I'm really not concerned about like all of these, like, I don't know, people are way too over concerned with whether the transaction itself is completely quote unquote anonymous or not. But yes, we will be doing that in the future, as I've said for quite a while. So if you are one of those people who is, for whatever reason, not content with complete decentralization being as anonymous as you want it to be, then yes, that kind of thing will be possible in the future with court directly. But, I think that you can be as anonymous as you want right now. Escrow supports are no. So that's the thing, right? So all this additional functionality that the ATs bring and so forth is only tied to court because court is the chain where the ATs run, and it's only able to be utilized with the with court, right? So potentially in the future some type of method could maybe be used for the ability to lock other coins in ATs, but I don't know. That's it's a lot different than literally being able to send court to an AT address, right? And that's what happens. The AT has its own address in court. So you can send court to the AT and the AT actually owns it, right? You can't make other coins on another chain actually owned by an AT. Not really. We could do some type of method where maybe we could lock something like a P2SH in an AT somehow, but still it's not going to be the same as the AT actually being the one who controls the coin. So it's not the same thing at all. That's why court's going to have a lot of value associated with that type of thing too. And of course, things like the names market, name registration, that's always going to be done in court. So court will have value driven that way, and people are way underestimating the functionality that comes along with a Qortal name. Now, as we continue to demonstrate more and more of that, I think that that is going to absolutely be the future of the way that everything on the digital side is run, guys. Like, so you'll be able to create anything from a simple, like, quote unquote NFT or proof of ownership to something as complex as an entire digital brand or an entire company and all of its digital assets and everything. It's code based, all of it, and sell that all at once. So I think that people are really not giving names their due as far as what that functionality really brings. It's like, so there's this service called what's it called, Empire Flippers or something like that, where it supposedly takes your domain and all the other stuff and puts it all together in one, and then allows you to transfer it really easily, right? But yeah, it's nothing like Qortal, where you don't even have to worry about servers or any nonsense at all. And these domains that people think they own, they don't own them. On Qortal, you actually own the name. So this is absolutely the way the future is going to be done. Whether people realize it right now or not doesn't matter, right? So yeah, like the name functionality is absolutely massive. Even with just that by itself, the value of court just being driven by that alone is going to be huge. So yeah. Anyways, so let's see. Is there a possibility to set up a reward share for the dev fund? I wanted to give 10% of my court earnings automatically. Okay, so the only accounts that can do reward shares at all, other than quote unquote self shares, which are the minting keys, right? So a self share is a public private key pair that gets created on the chain. Any reward share, right? It's another public private key pair that represents a relationship instead of a an account. And so you can create a reward share if you are level 5 or higher. So anyone who already has level 5 or higher, you can create 2 other reward shares. Most of the time, people use those for quote unquote sponsorship keys, but you can create a self share and you can create 2 other reward shares if you are level 5 or higher. If you're not, no, I'm sorry, you cannot right now. We could potentially figure out a way to make it so that you could do that, but the problem there is that it's all tied in with the minting. And so if you can create any type of reward share, the key that comes from that, and you assign it to any node, then both accounts in the reward share relationship start getting blocks minted. Potentially we could make it so that one specific type of reward share could work a little differently, but we would have to do a lot of development for that. So right now the answer is level 5 or higher can do a real reward share, or of course, sponsorship keys, which is essentially the same thing, but a real reward share actually shares reward. So yeah, the level 5 or higher can do it. Let's see. Qortal is the way. Thank you. Yes, I believe so as well, obviously. Let's see. So escrow is going to support private court when NFTs. Okay. Escrow is going to support court, whether it's private or not, doesn't matter. So yes, escrow supports court. Any AT supports court. So crowdfund, escrow, auto payments, all that kind of thing, and a lot more is possible too. In the future, all of that is court. Yeah. When NFTs, okay, so we are doing the first quote unquote private data type, and I don't remember if that's exactly what it's called, but for doing orders where that data will be private, that is going to also tie into a data type that cannot be modified. So right now we have what are called arbitrary transactions, right? And those transactions are used for things like the data and so forth. So they are able to be modified. So that doesn't work for an NFT. So we need a couple different data service types that are not able to be modified, which we are talking about now. So it shouldn't be all that long before we'll have things like proof of ownership, which could be used for quote unquote NFTs. Now, the name itself would be turned into the quote unquote NFT ownership, the digital ownership in that non changeable data type. and then anything else you want to include with that as far as like, data itself can be put on that name and then sold on the names market. And we could even set up, a separate section of the names market specifically for proof of ownership and things like that. I also think in the future I would like to have a way to do, chain of title that way, for property ownership, things like that. So yeah, I don't know exactly when. It's hard. Like anytime anyone asks when any of these things are going to happen, unless it's like in development now, it's really hard to guess when, right? Because this is all stuff that no one's ever been, no one's ever done any of this before. So all of the things on Qortal are completely unique, so it's really difficult to guess how long it's going to take until the dev goes, "Yo, I'm working on this, and I estimate it'll take potentially this long," and then I can kind of give a general idea. I usually like to not really focus on exactly when until I know for sure. And then I'll say, oh, it's going to be live tomorrow or whatever, right? So I'll keep everyone updated as I always do. Now, these meetings and so forth are a really good time to talk about this kind of stuff. And of course, I make announcements all the time to the begrudging a few people by doing that, apparently. Oh, doing more than one announcement a day is crazy. Like, okay, well, what if more than one announcement needs to be made in a day? You can mute channels, right? That's a thing. Anyways, already available. Basically, change your avatar to a picture. Boom, sell your name. Yeah, kinda. Except then that is changeable, right? So you don't want an NFT that is changeable, right? So that's the thing. Like if you actually want proof of ownership, you don't want somebody to go, "Oh yeah, by the way, hey, now the proof of ownership is something else." No. So you need a section where that's not updatable, right? So it won't work really in the way that we have it now. But yeah. Da, 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 Let's see. So, I mean, centralized as far as a reward share for the dev fund, I mean, the dev fund itself is centralized, obviously, because I control it, right? But you can track everything I'm doing with it. Now, in the future, I have plans for a dev fund that is created slightly differently and is able to be voted on and so forth. But that requires a little bit more thought and some development before that will actually be able to go live. So, but everybody knows that I control the dev fund, so I think they are aware of that. But yeah, I think I don't know. I don't have a lot more to talk about right at this moment. A lot of changes coming to Qblog, like I've been talking about. That's going to be really exciting. A lot of people have been asking about like emails and so forth, and this will also be able to, um, have messages that last longer. So you can use, mail instead of Q chat for communications that you want to last longer. And in reality, these mail messages will probably end up being faster than Q chat is right now, too. So, because it's going to use QDN as opposed to using unconfirmed transactions. So, yeah, it's going to be really cool. So, I'm really happy about that. As far as the QChat database and protocol, not 100% sure when that's going to happen. Right now, Cal is focused on a few other things. Once he lets me know, I will definitely let everyone else know. But yeah, I think if anyone else doesn't have any more questions right now, we'll cut it off at about an hour. I think that's good. I like to not, go on forever and ever with it. And an hour is good. I think even 2 hours sometimes feels a little bit too long. So, and, yeah, anyways, so if anyone else had any other questions, let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about the recurring payments.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that I've seen on Ethereum that I find to be interesting is streaming payments, as in it's done in real time continuously. I'm
What does that
wondering
mean?
it means that literally, like every second or some really small time period, a small amount is going through. So, one idea would be something like real time payments for businesses for their employees. You're literally being paid
How
as
does
you're
that work?
working. I don't know exactly how it works. Um, I
Hmm.
just know that it's a thing.
Kind
But
of sounds like a layer two type thing to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would need to know how it works exactly because, I mean, anything done on chain for Quartal right now, anyway,
Hmm.
needs to be confirmed. Now, obviously, the block times right now are a little bit slower than they should be, and the consensus is not 100% optimized right now, so it takes about 5 blocks for things to confirm, when in reality it should be 1 block. And so, like, and that's how it was at the very beginning, but then we had to modify things because thousands and thousands of minters and minting signatures and so forth. So, and we will improve this over time. But so the ideal functionality of Quartal is that it needs only one confirmation, and everything is spendable as soon as that one confirmation happens, including newly minted coins and everything, right? So, in theory, everything's going to speed up by 5 times or more in the future by default. So, but as far as like how are they sending real time coins that don't need a confirmation? Is my question.
Right. I'll look
Mm-hmm.
into it further, and if it
Yeah.
seems like something we could do, I'll bring it up again. But to
Yeah.
me, the use case that I would find interesting is, you know, being able to, watch a YouTube video and be paying for it as you're watching it.
Right. I mean, I could see a way to do that just by monitoring potentially unconfirmed transactions as, if a transaction's been submitted, then it should be available in the mempool and it can't go backwards. So if we just monitor for unconfirmed transactions, they could potentially be faster, right? Like I don't know about like actually being able to spend it immediately. It would need a confirmation in order to be spent, but waiting 60 seconds once everything is optimal is really not that long, right? So I don't
Right.
know, but yeah, I mean, we could definitely do it to where payments happen every 60 seconds, every block, right? That's definitely possible. But I mean, as far as like super instant, like right now type, I don't know how that functions without it being some sort of layer two thing like the Lightning Network or whatever. And even then, the Lightning Network still requires, once it's finalized, to be confirmed to be usable. So I don't know. Like you have to give me some more details on exactly how that works, and then we could potentially do something like that. But if it's some sort of layer two thing that's kind of centralized, then which is like a lot of the stuff on Ethereum and so forth has some sort of centralized component to it. So that's where I'm always like, yeah, maybe, but we always are shooting for everything being completely decentralized. So, but I think we could do something very similar to that. At the very least, we could definitely make it so that the payments happen every 60 seconds, which is not that long to wait, right? I think we could also potentially make it so that transactions are submitted more quickly than that, and we monitor for those specific unconfirmed transactions in the mempool and make something like that happen too. But yeah, the only issue there would be like, if for whatever reason that transaction doesn't make it into the block, then that could potentially be a problem. So, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
All right. Cool.
cool. Let's see. Someone else asking questions here too. Any works on VC is VC voice chat? Is that what you're talking about? Not focused there yet. We have talked about it. I've barely mentioned it really, so the devs haven't really talked about it. We've talked about streaming, as in streaming video, so that it doesn't play by downloading the entire video. But I kind of I like it the way that it works, to be honest. But yeah, streaming as far as voice chat and stuff like that. It's going to take a little bit of thinking because again, every single bit of data on QDN is encrypted and chunked, so it requires both decrypting and building on the fly, or some other special magic wizardry that Cal could put together. So we're not 100% focused on that particular aspect yet. But again, I will definitely make sure I let everyone know when these kinds of things are taking place so that everybody can be aware of it and so forth. So thanks for all your efforts from here in England. You are welcome, Arthurian Legend. I love that name. It's awesome. Yes, we are continuing to do everything as idealistically as we can, and in every aspect, making sure that everything is 100% decentralized and 100% not able to be controlled by any one group. Right. So it's pretty awesome. Thank you. Definitely. Let's see. I believe Podcasting 2.0 has streaming, Bitcoin payments, built. into tip for the amount of time listened. I'm not really sure what you're talking about there. Podcasting 2.0, what is that? Like, is that like a thing that I'm not aware of? Probably, huh? Uh, streaming Bitcoin payments built into the tip. Okay. The amount of
That
time
was in
listened.
regards to the streaming payments.
Right. What is podcasting 2.0?
The original podcasting was set up kind of using RSS feeds, and then was kind of handled off to Apple to kind of shepherd along. They're kind of taking it more private, putting in more payments. So the originators kind of developed a new protocol for it that I believe is open source. And then again, they've incorporated direct payments into it so that you can't be canceled.
Okay, I mean, we already have tipping on Qblog, so once we have the ability to do like streaming and stuff, then I mean, we could do something very similar to that. I think. But yeah, that would be possible for sure. Like having an AT that maybe the podcaster puts up, and then anyone who wants to listen for X amount of time can fund it or whatever, and then it'll automatically take place and pay the seller based on, or the podcaster based on how long the video has been playing or whatever. So we could potentially figure something like that out. Absolutely. Just we've never talked about anything like that before. Just we just talked about it today. So, but I've never brought it up to the devs or anything like that. So we can probably definitely figure something like that out. But yeah, we are not focused that direction quite yet. Thanks for all you do. All the best. Thank you. Let's see. How about new token issuance on Qortal or in Qortal or on Qortal in Qortal? Okay. I'm not a fan. That being said, I have always said that in the future I would like to see everything completely white labeled, and I would like to have the ability to launch your own chain, not your own token, right? So the difference here is a token is a token on another chain. It is like an asset on top of Qortal. We use that right now just for keeping track of how much Quora has been burned and things like that, right? We do have the ability to create assets on the chain. Now, the problem that I have with assets is every single asset system that I've ever seen has been used 95% for scams. And I just don't see the reasoning behind allowing 95% scams in for 5% legit, potentially tokens, right? So, another issue with tokens is that you have to create the entirety of the token at the time that you create it in the current model, which means that you basically have to do an ICO or an airdrop or whatever, which I find to be all kinds of nonsense. So, uh, I personally think there's really no reason to launch your own token. Why not just use Court? Most of the people are launching tokens right now to do like a crowd fund, to do a fundraising thing, which is stupid, and like that's not a legitimate way to do it, right? And in fact, they're gonna have a lot of issues in the future with the SEC and stuff like that, because that's like one thing that the SEC and I agree on, right? So there's no reason for that. Like, if you want to do fundraising, you do a crowd fund. You use Court instead of creating your own token, and then you're using a coin that is supported by everyone by default anyway. So why would you choose to use something that's not supported by everyone as opposed to something that is? Right? That's always been my question. I don't understand the reason behind everyone wanting to have their own token. Like, why? If you can give me an actual legitimate reason to have your own token, then maybe I'll understand. But if you're using it for crowdfunding or raising funds or anything like that, I don't find that to be a legitimate reason. And it's, having your own token is not necessary. You can create all things utilizing the existing one that's going to be global and accepted by everyone. Then, like, why would you choose to use one that's not over one that is? That's always my question with the tokens thing. I just don't quite understand. Like, I have myself launched tokens on Burst and so forth in the past as like using for kind of like a stock in ownership of a mining operation or something like that. which, yeah, okay, it was like some type of use case, but that can be done with the same idea with a proof of ownership on Qortal, where you don't need a token. You can just use a name with proof of ownership on it and so forth. So, and when we get the ability to have multiple names per account, you can have multiple of those like used for different things all on your same account. So, like that type of thing will be able to be done anyway, right? So, I mean, creating your own token, no one has really given me a legitimate reason to do that. If there is a legitimate reason to do that, then it's a very small percentage of a legitimate reason, and I just don't quite understand it. But yeah, in the future, yes, I do want to make it so that you can launch your own chain. Now, the difference between a token and having your own chain is that you can use that chain directly as an application database. You can also make it so that that chain is minted from block zero so that you don't have to have one single person creating the entirety of the token and then giving it out to people, which is nonsense. You can create it with its own set of minting rules and make it minted from block zero, just like Court, and have people mint it. And then, okay, cool, great. It's a legitimate launch. Fine. That makes much more sense to me. But I still don't understand why everyone needs their own token, right? Yeah. Anyways, let's see. Is it possible to have some sorting on lists? Okay, lists as far as the block lists and stuff like that, or not sure what you're talking about as far as lists, because the only lists that we have are like the block lists and stuff like that. And if you're trying to sort those, or like, yeah. Will it be possible in the future to have searching of websites, content, so that more? Yes, of course, absolutely. That will, of course, require someone building an application for that. Now, I'm not 100% sure exactly how that would be built, right? Because you'd need one that actually goes through and like opens the sites and then gets like a cached copy of it or whatever, and then puts that all together, and then because it's not the same thing as like the internet where you can just like send a spider out there and it goes and it like because you actually have to open it and you have a copy of it and then you figure it out and then so forth. So right now we do have the metadata and you can search based on that. I don't know if you can search based on all of it right now in the existing search, but yeah, a much more in-depth quote unquote search engine could absolutely be built, but it's not something that would be super simple to build. And it would need to have a bit of a different way of functioning overall. But yeah. So the website listing, yeah, you mean like just arranging things differently there, like in the browse section? Yeah, we do plan on doing that. It's not like as simple as you would think it would be. But yeah, we do plan on having the ability to arrange things in whatever order you want. That is going to happen in the future. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a thing. Right now, it's just alphabetical order, I think, or whatever. But yeah, we will be able to have it, different arrangements based on size or whatever, right? But yeah, we're not quite there yet with that. It's a little bit more difficult and technically complex than you would think it would be because of the way that the UI is built and the things that it uses and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. I think anybody else have questions, or are we good? I still want someone to explain to me why everybody's so focused on having their own token. That would be nice to know. I want to understand because I just don't. If someone can explain what a legitimate reason is to have your own token, then maybe we could talk about it. 'Cause I've in the past talked about the idea of potentially allowing tokens to be created on Qortal, but only done after the person wishing to create it comes up with a good reason, presents it to the community, and it passes a vote. Then it can be launched, right? Because I don't want to see a bunch of friggin' nonsense. My dumb token, a billion of those launched on Qortal. It just becomes a huge mess of nonsense for no reason, right? So, but if somebody has an actual legitimate idea and a real reason to create a token on Qortal, then they present it to the community and the community agrees, then great. That makes sense. Totally. Fine. Then it's probably going to be something that actually lives and doesn't just become another fucking piece of nonsense sitting on the chain forever, right? So that's what I'm worried about, because every single asset system I've seen in the past, literally, anytime you allow people to create quote unquote tokens on the chain where they have to launch the entirety of it and then they divvy it out to people, it becomes a spam thing where they just spam wallets with it, or it becomes like just nonsense. And I just don't see the point. So I don't want to, flood Qortal with nonsense. Like this, like we made sure that we built everything 100% legit for a reason, right? Now allowing a bunch of nonsense just to be flooded all over Qortal just kind of doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, I think if we do allow something like that in the future, it would need to be done first off with the voting system, and then it would need to be done with a proposal and a legitimate way to issue said token, which I did come up with a potential idea for that, wherein the token itself is actually issued and controlled by an AT only at first. Then that AT has a distribution method that it uses to distribute the token based on an action happening, or whatever. Like in the case that I was thinking, it would be like, if someone could prove that they purchased food, and then the token could be backed by food, and it only gets created when that food was guaranteed and verified purchased and so forth. But it's difficult to create without some method of being able to potentially game it and so forth. So it's there's a lot of things that come up when you start talking about tokens. And yeah, I would still really like someone to explain, like, if they have a legitimate reason to have their own token, what that reason is, as opposed to just using court, especially now when you can pick up so much court for so low price, and or be able to do a crowd fund to raise the court that you're looking for and start off with that, and then you have something that's globally accessible and globally supported. Why would you specifically choose to use something that's not, when you could just use court, is my question, especially when it's like buying Bitcoin at 10 cents right now. So yeah, anyways, anything else? Or if not, I would like to thank you all for showing up, and thank you for the questions, and we will see you next week. I can stick around a little bit after the recording ends to answer questions and any others that may exist. But yeah, thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week.